You are listening to the author's message with Denise Joy and Irene Pro for lively discussions and guest interviews on authors, publishers, readers, and of course our listeners. Join us every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern on Global Voice Radio. Here are your hosts, Denise Joy and Irene Pro. I want to welcome all of our listeners to another episode of the author's message on Global Voice Radio. I'm Denise Joy Thompson, one of the hosts of the author's message. Irene Pro was not able to make it today, and I am very blessed to have two guests with me today. And I want to thank Gertrude Frith and Debra Person for joining me today. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you
for having
Glad
us.
to be here.
Thank you.
Yes.
So Gertrude, who is known as Gert, and Debra have written about their experiences in Saved by Grace, Opening Doors for Wounded Women Walking. And this book is compiled by Leanne Fuller. And the book contains many stories of women who have dealt with sexual assault, molestation, rape, addiction. And so one of the things that is important to the author's message is that we have authors come on to talk about their writing, to talk about the stories, the experiences that they share. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so I'm very honored to have individuals who have stepped up and shared their stories to help others in their life. So again, welcome, ladies. And the two of you met or have been working together for several years in Exodus House. And Debra, this is a place that you created, that you founded, that provides support to women who are dealing with addictions, who are dealing with things in their life where that they need support. And you're currently located in Syracuse, New York.
Yes, I am. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I just wanted to say, first of all, with Debra and my relationship, we met over 20 years ago. And as Debra was going on with her life, we mostly stayed in contact by phone. And I was continuing to go on in my life with the force courage that I used with alcohol and drugs, but we stayed on the phone. She always wondered how I was over the phone, and then she always just never judged, what are you doing, are you still drinking or anything. Now, last year, we had a phone call together, and it just so happened that I was at a point in my life where I was so tired, like I had been before, but this was a different tiredness. And I have been asking God, when in the world am I going to ever be grown? Because like last year, I was 69. I'll be 71 on the 2nd of May. And the phone rang, and it was Debra. And she said, Gert, I knew she had been going on with her life. I knew she had this vision to help women. And I also figured, I wouldn't fit in there or anywhere. Right. That's how I always felt.
Yeah.
But because I had been to all the rehabs in the world, and the self-help and the AA and the church, and I wasn't listening because I believed that God loved me and would deliver me, but I didn't really surrender. At any point did I really surrender, come to think of it, but that's after the fact. I want to get to the good part. The phone call was, Gert, I have my house here with the women, and I think you'd be good. You'd make a good house mom, house manager with some of the experiences that you've had. And I said, wow. I said, I don't really have any clean time. This September of last year. Mm-hmm. She said, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You got some experience. You've been through some of these things that these women have been through, Gert, and I know you, and she did know me, and she did love me. I always knew that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I said, well, Deb, let me pray about it. Let me pray about it, and let me talk with my brother. Because I am about ready to leave Alabama. I always do geographical cures. That's what I had done in the past. But this was different. And I prayed, and I talked to my brother, and my brother told me, Gert, go for it. He'd met Debra over 20 years ago. Go for it. Mm-hmm. Because he could see something that I didn't see. He could see something good, and he knew exactly what I was doing in Alabama and how depressed and up and down I was. Anyway, I made my mind up. God made it up for me. Thank you, Jesus. And I called her, and I got here October 1st of last year. And I'm saying from October 1st last year is the day of my clean time. Yeah. That's a biggie for me.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah. Because over the years, I'd done 3 years clean when my husband was alive, with nothing changing on the inside. So clean time but it was something different. When I came here, and I met the women, and this was my niche, and this is gonna work. This is me. And then I was finding a voice, but I wanted to talk about those years in between, how I got to be so defeated and 4 years old. I'm the sixth child of 6 children, and when you're young, when you're not 6 years old, you don't live with the rest of the family. You got to stay down in the country with the grandparents, because the mother has to work, and the other ones can go to school, look after each other. So I'm under the protection of my grandmother and my grandfather in Alabama, country Alabama, down. And very unhappy little girl, because I'm separated, first of all. But my first memories, or I call him this tall man, I came to realize it was my grandfather, picking me up out of the bed at night and taking me into in a darkened room in there where the fireplace was. And I called it hard fingernails. That's the memory I always had. Could have been any part of his body, for as I know. And put me back in the bed later. So my grandmother is here in the house, sleep at night, but during the day, I'm wondering, why can't she see this face, this sad face? This is where this baby Gert came from. I know that's where it came from, because it was always, all the rehabs were, when I did have those 30 days sober, I would see, or I would get the advice, Gert, you got to deal with that little baby in there. Because this little baby only became big Gert when I drink, and I was then grown and mature, and that never worked. It would work through jobs. I'm retired. But anyway, it's little baby Gert. And I always would, why my grandmother? So I was angry, and then I was thinking probably what's going to happen tonight when I go to sleep.
Right. So at 4 years old, Gert, when you were staying with your grandparents, that's when the abuse started for you.
Absolutely.
And in the book, Saved by Grace, you write to Baby Gert, right? You write a letter to Baby Gert. So talk a little bit about that process for you, writing to you as a young child.
Yes. It was really what helped me. And if you look at the book that I wrote it in, this little black and white notebook, nothing, no erasures, my hand just wrote. And I was writing to her because I wanted her to feel better, because I was beginning to understand that it wasn't her fault. I was beginning to see that it wasn't my fault at that time. Only that other behavior later, I blame it on me. But this baby Gert, I told her, wow, you have a lot of strength. You have a lot of strength, because you survived some horrific nights and days from like 4 to 6. You couldn't leave there until you were 6, and you couldn't talk about it. You just could look at your grandmother, and this family down there had this game of playing with little Gert. I was the only girl. There were baby boys, but playing with Gert. Let me tickle you. And my grandmother would say, don't let him take all my sugar. So I was so angry, because I'm like, how in the world is this? I couldn't even say it. This can't be your sugar. And they're not taking sugar. They're doing something to me. And man, so I just stayed kind of, the word was like ticked off as a little girl. And they're not, and I'm running to her. I remember running to her, and she's just like, don't let them take out my sugar. I wanted her to hit somebody, you know, my uncles or somebody. Because whatever my grandfather was doing, it must have been okay for others to do that. Right?
So you wanted your grandmother to save you. So baby Gert, who you write to, who in some ways you needed to love and forgive and embrace baby Gert.
Yes.
That's what your letter is about, is writing to her.
And this is what I should do right now, because as I talk about it, then I'm still thinking about Big Gert, because Big Gert is so much better. I wanted baby Gert to know she was so strong. She was so strong, and the things that she taught me was, okay, just observe what's going on. You know, this is not right. She knew it. And then later on, I didn't use that information that she had implanted in me, because I continued to go into relationships where I'm going to drink to cover up the feeling. She didn't have alcohol to cover up her feeling. She had to handle it, you know, straight up. So I tell her that, and I go on to tell her that, wow, I said, one day we are going to be walking hand in hand where all that you have shown me, I'll be using. So I have come to infuse those two together. But it took leaving a place and getting to another place, not only geographically, but where I could like think, pray, help somebody else, look at somebody else. So I'm just thinking I'm just here at Exodus House talking to the ladies. Oh, every hug that I didn't get, that's what it is. And these women love it. Honest to goodness. I never could have children. So here I have been treated like this mom. And they will, like one of I call them my daughters, came in last week. She had gone to a training for 4 hours. She couldn't wait to get in the door with her certificate and show me. You know, I was like, that's all that. And I was so proud of her. And she's been through, like little Gert.
So, Gert, something that you said is very important, I think, for our listeners to make sure that they heard this. And one of the things that you had said is that you and baby Gert, right, that part of you that you needed to embrace and recognize that she survived, that the two of you would be walking hand in hand. And because in some ways that makes you whole, right? That makes you everything that you are, and accepting and and not blaming a part of us, right? When something terrible like that happens, then sometimes we want to blame ourselves because others blame us.
Yes.
And part of that writing process, part of getting things out on paper, helps us to let go, helps us to release, right, emotions that we have. And then we can look at how do I now embrace every part of me so I don't blame myself, and then I don't allow anyone else to blame me either.
Yes, absolutely.
And so and as you're telling your story, and in my past, I have worked with a lot of children and adults who are sexual assault survivors. And so your story so resonates because this happens often in our society. It happens around the world.
Yes.
And we want to take away the shame and the blaming of the children and adults that this happens to, because it's a crime that the perpetrators commit. And we want to talk about it so that we can be whole as you and Baby Gert come together. And it is so impressive that at almost 71, right?
Yes.
You are now living the fullest life that you can. We do not have to stop.
Yes.
Right? No matter our age, we can love ourselves. We can look at what has happened and no longer let it block how we want to live.
Yes.
And you are an inspiration in sharing what has happened to you and where you are now in life, that you are living everything that you can.
Yes, yes. And happier than I've ever been. Speaking of writing, over those years, I remember I always wrote, and then I would write down things that were going on, and the next morning, maybe read them, and they were painful. So I would rip them because I didn't want people to see it. And then later on, I think when I came to Schenectady, and I started writing some events, like at Schenectady Community College. Will the real Gertrude please stand up? They had a rhythms magazine, and just that one essay, and I wrote it, and then I won. But so they published that. So I just wanted to say the importance of writing. So I felt real good that I could write something to little Gert that was really gonna soothe me inside and comfort me inside, and I did that. And that little girl is a big girl now. That's probably what I want to say about her. Yeah.
Right, because you are living today for her and who you have become.
Yeah, it's good, and that's
and
good.
You're helping other women to also, deal with their experiences, to deal with their demons, so they can live as they want to. And as you said, this is the happiest time that you've been. And that is, like I said, inspiration for others who will listen to this show, who will read Saved by Grace, and that they too can see what they can do, and that we don't have to hold on to the molestations and the rapes or other tragedies that happen in a person's life.
Yes, definitely. That said it for me. That was exactly what my intentions were when I wrote that. I'm glad you could see that, and I certainly hope others, especially my nieces, who are actually in domestic situations now, and then I hope they would. I would ask them to read the book, because then I needed the courage to, step up. It's not a secret anymore. I recognize that this person is abusing you. Auntie loves you. And so I'm just going to be in your business a little bit. because I wanted my grandmother in my business. That was a different abuse, but it's the same thing if they're getting smacked around now.
Yes.
And it hurts me. And they call me up and they tell me. And so if I'm with other women that are not my blood relatives, I could also, I thought by example, but I got to tell them that it's not acceptable. Not acceptable under any circumstances.
And your writing and being on this show is sharing that message with people, that it is not acceptable. We don't want it to be a secret, and there's always someone to tell. And so we will make sure that message gets out. So Debra, let's talk a little bit about Exodus House, because you've developed, created, founded Exodus House to help other women, but also it came out of your own experiences and what you needed in the past to heal and deal with the sexual abuse that happened to you. And so you knew that you could help others.
Yes. I, in retrospect, I was a scared, frightened little girl. I had learned through my relatives that what goes on in the house stays in the house, no matter what it is. And that is one of the reasons why, when I think about it now, that I never, ever told anyone in my family that I was molested by a family member until the day that I stood up in Grace Baptist Church and told my story, and my mother happened to be there. And so that was the first time I've ever said it in public, but it's the first time my mother was hearing it. And when I said it, I just looked at her, and it was out of not just love, because I love my mother, but it was, I was hoping to give her some relief, because I believe that she may have known about it or maybe not. I don't know, but this is just what I think in my mind. Yeah. So it was a way of me saying, in spite of that, it wasn't your fault. That's what I wanted her to get. It wasn't her fault, because my mother loves me and my mother's very protective of me. Mm-hmm. So I was able to share that then. And then as I think about Exodus House, you mentioned Exodus House and me coming back to Syracuse and finding it, it was major. It was meant for me to do this because of the way that I left. I literally exited Syracuse. And that was because of what I was involved in. I'd never been married. I never owned a house. Never worked the way I was working, making the money that I was making. So I had all of these external things that I didn't know at the time that I was still hiding behind. It took some more experiences to discover that. But it took for me to leave Syracuse to know for sure that I was hiding behind these things, because I was embarrassed, because I'm born and raised in Syracuse. What would people say about me? Not only that, I was married. So I decided to leave. And so I went to my mother like I always have done. I have 5 brothers. I'm my only daughter, the second oldest. And I said, I have to get out of here. So her and my grandmother Chum helped me to leave Syracuse in 1996, left my husband and any and everything that was in it. And so I went away to get some help. But on that journey, of getting help, I was still able to mask it. I would call it masking. I was always the perfect resident, or in a facility, one of those rehabs. I was always the perfect resident. I didn't even know how much pain I was in. I never knew that until as of late, which is something I'll disclose in a few minutes. But I never knew how much pain, that I was in. I've been running and never faced it. And then while I was on a journey in Schenectady, the same familiar thing happened again. And I knew that I couldn't be in my right mind. I had to either have some marijuana, some alcohol, or something, because whatever that thing was inside of me, I called it a void. You know, I called it that it needed to be Jesus, but he's always been with me because my grandmother loved the Lord so much that she introduced him to me when I was 7.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that's where all those moments of conviction came, you know,
Right.
on my journey, because knowing this is not the right thing to do. That's actually probably why I left Syracuse. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I woke up one morning in an apartment, and my husband and I had gotten back together, but we never dealt with the issues and the elephant in the room, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing you know, we had, within almost 2 years, we had a cleaning business. You know, we had an apartment, we had all those material things again. So we're able to hide behind those in your house and everything.
Right.
But on December 3rd, I woke up and there was nothing in the house. Sold it, all gone. And again, conviction. I can't stay here. I got to get out of here. So he told me about the Schenectady City Mission, because prior to me going there, he had been there in 1996 because he eventually found out where I was in Schenectady. And he told me on one night that he was going to stay at the city mission. I couldn't believe it because I wouldn't stay at a mission. Not me, not a mission. So in December 3rd, 1998 is when he said there's a place next door that they have for women. I said, really? I said, well, call over there. He called and they had one bed left, 6 women. And so I knocked on the door with my bag of Price Chopper, my Price Chopper bag of my life. And this woman, Sister Chris, she opened the door and she welcomed me in. So I came into a house where there were 6 other women that had been there before I was there. Mm-hmm. And then she asked me to be a resident assistant. But while I was there, I was able to talk about, and it's a faith-based organization, I was able to talk about the pain that I had been suffering with for so many years. But it wasn't even there in retrospect that I really had a breakthrough. Mm-hmm. And so it would be 10 years plus later that I believe that I'm coming into my own, or coming in who God designed me to be.
Now, Debra, one of the things that you had mentioned to me earlier was not only that you were molested as a child, but you also had been sexually assaulted.
Mm-hmm. I was. I remember on one of my geographical journeys, you know, like Gert, I would go from city to state, but we will always find ourselves there. Yeah. And I happened to be in a situation one night and I was raped, and I was living in Atlanta, Georgia, and I had to make my way back to the city, and I'm walking down this dark street, and I had to, and I didn't know until I met with this woman, Pastor Marlene Dupe, through some counseling, that night I was traumatized twice, because not only was I raped, but I was terrified because I had to try to find my way back. So every time a car would come down the street, I would jump in the bushes, scared to death, jump in the bushes. But by the grace of God, and only by the grace of God, I was able to make it through. That was one of the 2 rapes that happened to me in Georgia. And then in Syracuse, something happened to me, a neighbor that lived on our street. I was about 17, riding my bike. Mm-hmm. Took me to a park, trusted him. He raped me, and he told me never to say anything. And I was afraid because he had such a big family, because he said he would do things to my family. So,
well, and oftentimes our perpetrators, right? That's what they tell us. They mm-hmm. tell people to keep it a secret, not to tell anyone, and they threaten their victims and the victim's family. Mm-hmm. And also, we learned that if we talk about it, then people will look down on us, or people will question us, people will blame us. You know, that's another thing. By the 2 of you sharing your stories, it's hopefully helping others to realize it's not their fault, and we need to talk about it. And that's part of the journey of getting better, right? That's part of the journey of letting go of all the negativity that's associated with what happened to us.
Yes. I want to say this. I know that when he told me not to say anything, it reminds me when I was molested. And, you know, you didn't say anything. You keep that a secret. You don't even talk about it. So it was easy for me, not only being afraid of him, but just thinking about that time, way back when. I know I better never say anything. So I have to go on through life with these masks and layers of masks. I'm pretending like everything is just okay. Because I was really good at that. I love dressing. I can dress up the mess. But I was a walking woman wounded. That's what I was for many, many, many years. And then I come back to Syracuse 10 years later. And I was working at Vera House, great organization, has been around for many years. And that's when I had my breakthrough through a training that they were giving up there. And it was one of my colleagues that was giving the training. And she was one of the people that I was able to open up and share about my rape. Now, after all of this time now, a child, and I come back home, after leaving in 1996, I came back home in 2005. And this woman put me in touch with the people that needed to help me. That was a breakthrough. But little did I know, as of late, as what is about last week, that, and before I say this, I need those that know of me and need to know that the ones that have been around me since I started this ministry, I was very difficult to deal with, very difficult to be around because, and it doesn't justify it, but I know some of the people that were around me when this ministry started were around me for the wrong reasons. They were trying to get ideals. They were backstabbing. These were good people. And I felt as though I was being raped and molested. So I'm going to protect Debra. So, I'm going to come off a certain way. And I'm really not like that. But I lost a lot of friends. And I may have hurt people indirectly or directly. And with that being said, I'll apologize if that's the case. But up until, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So the people that have been around me and trying to figure me out and probably still are, and what was wrong with her, and she's like this, and she's this way, it's because I was a master, I thought, of hiding. And last week or 2 weeks ago, I went to see my doctor, and I'm telling you, I never, ever, ever cried like I did. And the great thing is that I was talking to somebody that wasn't my doctor. She was a resident intern from upstate. And I disclosed that I was pregnant. I mean, not pregnant, but I had depression. And it's in the book about the cocoon. So I was able to live inside of that cocoon for many, 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 many years. And on this journey of this ministry, there's times when people might have not seen me, or they either heard me over the phone, I sound sluggish or whatever, because I was hiding. I would go to these events, come home, and go into my room with my purple curtains, close the door, and I lived like this for a while, but I'm free. Depression is real.
Well, one of the things that I want to go back to what you said, and you write about it, is you mentioned the cocoon. And, people retreat to a place where they feel safe. The cocoon, you were safe. You could cross that barrier. You could keep people away. And oftentimes, that's where people go. They go to a cave. They go to a cocoon. They go somewhere where they're not going to let other people hurt them. And in some ways, yes, that protects us, but it keeps us from living. It keeps us from healing. And, the other thing that you said, I think that a lot of our listeners can understand and resonate with is how are we reacting to other people, right? Because it's hard enough as a human being to trust others. But when you are a victim of sexual assault, especially by a family member, and then it's by a neighbor, and it could be by someone else that we know, we definitely then don't trust people. And so we might be angry, we might be blunt, we might be difficult to get along with because those are defense mechanisms. That's right. And, you identifying these so our listeners can hear, it sort of gives them some insight, whether it's to themselves or to others that they have dealt with, and say, oh, that might be why someone is acting that way. Not that we want to assume that everybody who is angry has been a victim.
Yes.
But we know if we look at statistics, I think it's 1 in 6 women in their lifetime are victims of sexual assault.
Yes, it is.
So then, and I think for men, it might be 1 in 21. So we have a lot of people in our world that are sexual assault victims, and there's certain behaviors and emotions that come with that.
And you know, at this point in my life, writing that book, it helped to set me free. You know, but I still at that point hadn't realized how bad this depression was, but I understand it now, and it was necessary, and so I'm free because of it.
Right.
And I just want to encourage others, you know, to, you know, take some of the things that we said and, you know, to share their stories as well.
Debra, talk about the writing process for you.
Oh, wow. That writing process for me, and I have writer's block, I always tell Gert, but that writing process for me was hard. Leanne and I were going back and forth on the phone. It was hard because now I'm getting ready, you know, to open myself up.
Right.
To some people.
Yes.
You know, maybe I'm going to tell too much. Maybe I don't need to. These are thoughts that I'm having inside my head. And those things would keep me from writing. Those things kept me from sometimes answering Leanne's email. She's going to hear this now. or responding to her because, you know, I have lived with this secret and this awful secret and pain for so long, or I have been held hostage by it. And,
yes.
You know, it had consumed my life. It became a part of my life, like one of my arms, you know. So I was actually comfortable with that. But then the process of writing eventually, you know, started freeing me. And I believe there's a line in the end where I was finally set free to fly like a butterfly, you know, because I lived in that cocoon in silence. It was just the most comfortable place you ever want to be in. So I thought, but it was killing my soul.
Yes.
But it was because of the fact that my grandmother Chum loved the Lord Jesus Christ and introduced me to him when I was 7, that spark that was inside of me was always there. So I'm on fire.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on fire for the Lord and I'm set free.
Yes. Yes. And in some ways, you know, as you said, you were held hostage.
Yes.
By our thoughts, what we create, because we don't know any better, especially when these things happen to us as children, right? And you don't know any better. And so you learn to survive by creating a story or a reason that things happen. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes it's not the reason because we're not adult enough, or our thinking process is not mature enough to recognize the perpetrator was wrong. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we're told, oh no, nothing even happened. Mm-hmm. And you know that's not true. So then as a child, we can only blame ourselves or expect ourselves to have done something different, which is not the truth.
That's right. And you know, I think about this thought just came to my mind. Exodus 3 Ministries is like conceiving. I never was able to have children, but it was like giving birth, you know, to a vision. I remember my mentor, Sister Chris, telling me that now everybody's going to be in a delivery room with you. Some people are going to leave. And when I gave birth to it, it was like I had to protect it because it's not the little girl, Debbie, that was molested. This was a different person. And she's a little bit more stronger and she can stand up. So what I did is I felt protective of the ministry, you know, although God had given me a vision, you know, I was holding it close. But then I start letting people in. And it's like, you know, the Exodus 3 Ministries is in a baby carriage. And so I trust these people to come alongside and help me, right? I come back home and they had the baby sitting on the porch in the cold. Then they had the baby on the sidewalk and then they had the baby in the street. And so I was protecting that, and by any means necessary. That's why when I mentioned I may have hurt people indirectly or directly, but it had a lot to do with what happened to me when I was first molested. It goes all the way back there, and I had never dealt with it. But like I said, I am free. I've been set free. I'm having them.
And another thing that's interesting, when we think about the cocoon, it's the birth of the butterfly.
Ooh, yes. Yes.
You had a birth of Exodus House.
Mm-hmm.
And you were rebirthing, right? You were birthing from the cocoon. I mean, you've worked to that point.
Yes. Yes. And you know, inside a cocoon, there's water inside of a cocoon, and that's where life is. That's what water is. And just think I was living in that and didn't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know it. It represents life. I was being nurtured, cultivated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
For the good.
For such a time as this.
Yes.
That's my favorite.
Yes, for such a time as
scripture.
this.
So Gert and Debra, what would you say to others about writing? What would you recommend they do? How would you encourage them to write?
I would encourage them to get yourself a book in anything and everything. Don't try to see if it's right or wrong. Write it down. Just write it down. Later on, even the next day, you can look over it. Don't throw it away no matter what. But maybe the next day, you can just look over it. Don't try to figure it out. And just continue to write. A picture will emerge. Sometimes it may be painful, but a picture of what's happening with you is going to emerge. And please know that if you're writing down what's going on, it's all true. It's your truth. So it's no one can judge it. Mm-hmm. Write it and let that picture come up to your heart. Let the picture of what's going on come up to your heart. And you will receive some comfort. You will receive some comfort from that. And you will receive some insight into yourself. Don't throw it away. Continue to write. Just continue to write, no matter what.
Yeah. When I would say, I think about the saying I have, many people that have been around me know about the inside job. And everything begins from the inside out. And so the writing process for me and anybody that decides to pick up a journal based on just what you said, every time you begin to write, it's like the inside job is actually expressing itself and it's on paper, but it's freeing. If you get up, just say a couple of words, trust the process. You know, my mentor says, don't leave before the miracle happens. The miracle is going to happen because you're going to write about it. It's such I don't know the word for it, but it's just free just to write. And it can happen for anyone.
Yes.
I mean, it happened to us. It can happen for anyone. Pain is pain.
Yes.
Right.
Pain doesn't discriminate.
And in some ways, when we're not talking about our thoughts, when we're not writing about our thoughts, then we ourselves are keeping things a secret.
Right.
And by talking about it, by writing about it, we are not giving in to the individuals who told us to keep it a secret.
Right. We're breaking those chains. It's like breaking those chains of bondage that have held us down and oppressed us for so many years from the inside out. Yeah. And it's like breaking free, out of that cocoon because the power is inside of us.
And no longer being a hostage.
That's right.
Gert, I loved the way you said the picture emerges. Because I also think that individuals who have been sexually assaulted create a story and a picture based on what's the word I want? They don't have the full facts, right? When we're a child, we don't have the right pieces of the puzzle to create the right picture.
Right.
So when we start writing and we can read that, we start making more sense out of what has happened and how we've dealt with it, so that we can now put it into a perspective or see the picture as we are today. And then it takes away that blame and take away the shame. and we have a new picture, right, with colors and beauty instead of maybe that darkness that we had been holding on to.
Yes.
Imagine
Absolutely.
that, when I was molested, I know today for sure it was a family member, but what troubled me, it was who it was, but I never saw the face, but it did happen. Still never saw the face, but I know who the individual is. I know that it happened. So that picture, I never had to see that. I just had to get to a point where I was able, or through a point that I was able to write about it. And I just
And now your picture is out of the cocoon. It's a beautiful butterfly.
Light.
You are doing so much to help other women, Debra.
Yes.
And Gert, you are being that mother to others who need a mother, and you also having the love of daughters.
Yes.
So I want to thank the two of you so much. I am blessed for having this opportunity to talk with you. And I am very grateful that you said yes to sharing your experiences, sharing the message that you have written in Saved by Grace, Opening Doors for Wounded Women Walking. And so we will, be marketing your book through Global Voice Radio, also providing resources that women can call when they have been sexually assaulted. So thank you again for your time, for sharing so openly and authentically so that you can help others.
It's been an honor, Denise.
It's been an honor, Denise. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us for another episode of The Author's Message on Global Voice Radio. And if you need more information about reporting a sexual assault, then please, you can contact me, Denise Joy Thompson. I'll be providing resources on our group Facebook page, Global Voice Radio, because help is out there. And Debra and Gert are definitely helping women in their area. So just know that there are other resources to help any victims of sexual assault.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You are listening to The Author's Message with Denise Joy and Irene Pro for lively discussions and guest interviews on authors, publishers, readers, and of course our listeners. Join us every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern on Global Voice Radio.